Hi, my name's Samuel, and when I was a child, I stopped eating mushrooms because the texture reminded me of eating slugs. It was a mistake, and I realized that much later in life, but today I want to talk about a much bigger mistake I made, one that almost cost me a year-long tabletop RPG campaign, so stick around because this might actually save your campaign too. About a year ago, I had this itch to run a campaign in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition. I was really excited and really pumped to do it, but there was just one small issue. I only had one committed player, which was nowhere near enough for the epic saga I had in mind. So I did what any desperate GM would do. I turned to Facebook. I put out an open call inviting everyone from seasoned veterans to complete novices, and the pitch was simple. Join me for a one-shot adventure, and if things go well, we'll turn it into a grand campaign. And guess what? It worked like a charm. 5 adventurers answered the call, stepping into the dark, dangerous, and incredibly complex world of Warhammer. But here's where the fairy tale starts to crumble. A few months into our epic campaign, I noticed something disturbing. I wasn't enjoying myself. I was increasingly frustrated, both with the scenarios I was running and my players. Now, this wasn't about learning curves. We were all grappling with those. This issue was more fundamental, and it took me a while and many post-game debriefs with my wife and a player friend to put a finger on it. So after a lot of self-reflection and conversations, I realized what was bugging me. My players weren't behaving like the heroes I thought they were. And see, here's where I went wrong. I assumed that my players were the heroes of the story. I prepped for good, heroic decisions, but then they started doing the unexpected and in some cases just downright criminal. But you see, in the beginning, it was easy for me to label them as the heroes. You see, my party, there's a human outlaw trying to avenge her murdered husband, a cursed wood elf on a coming-of-age journey, a dwarf bound to a magical hammer that holds the soul of his brother. There's another wood elf who is struggling with alcoholism and trying to find his purpose among his people, and a grey wizard student who's looking for their missing mentor and who's like a father figure to them. I mean, it all sounds like a party of heroes ripped straight from a fantasy novel, right? But reality check, these folks weren't behaving heroically. See, I prepped each session, planned out NPCs, the narrative branches, all thinking that my players would likely always do the right thing, the good thing, because they're the heroes, right? This all changed very early on when, as part of a set piece, the players are caught up in a riot. It's the Marketplace riot for any of you Warhammer players out there. Now, normally this encounter can be resolved in unarmed combat. All you've got to do is just throw some punches. It's all going to be over very soon, but not for my players. They drew their blades and brutally and mercilessly cut down some of their attackers. It's fine. I thought they were in a riot. They're scared. That makes sense. We'll just ignore the fact that that coming-of-age wood elf I was talking about is just showering himself in the blood of a poor ogre over there in the corner. Later on in our journey, the human outlaw, you know, the one who's avenging the murder of their husband, the savior of the people, well, when one of their hirelings who had just helped them save the entire party in a massive fight revealed that they were in the group of bandits that killed her husband and, while unarmed and on his knees, asked for forgiveness, she slit his throat without hesitation. And listen, we've seen this happen in other campaigns and in other popular media. Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars, classic example of someone that should have been a hero and then went completely the opposite direction. On the flip side of that, we've got Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones, started off as an almost clear-cut villain, but had one of the most fascinating character arcs that kept oscillating between good and bad. The point is, characters can be complex, and it's a mistake to pigeonhole them. My aha moment came when I finally understood that my players weren't bad at role-playing, they were simply playing complex, self-interested characters.
You are a bad guy, but this does not mean you're a bad guy.
They weren't evil, but they were far from virtuous. And once I embraced this, the tension just melted away. You see, the narrative became richer and more complex, reflecting their morally grey choices. So, what's the takeaway for all the GMs out there? Well, it's easy to fall into the trap of binary expectations. But role-playing games are a space for complex characters and intricate narratives. If you find yourself frustrated because the storyline isn't aligning with your expectations, maybe it's time to adjust those expectations, not your players. Challenge yourself to adapt the narrative to fit your players' choices. I'm not saying you let them get away with murder unless that is going to fit the story, but be open to deviations from the heroic ideal. Sometimes the most memorable stories are the ones you never saw coming. So that's my cautionary tale, and I hope you can learn from my mistake. Now I'm curious, what are some of the pitfalls you've faced as a GM? Are you encountering any obstacles in your current campaigns? I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. Equally, if you find this video valuable, give it a like. As a new channel focused on elevating your tabletop RPG experiences, every like, share, and comment helps a lot. Thanks for sticking around, and may your adventures be as intricate and exciting as you allow them to be.